Buckle up, this is going to be a challenging ride. Santa Claus is one of the most recognizable characters of all time. It was almost midnight on Christmas Eve, 2008 in Covina, California, where the events of our case take place. The Ortega family was hanging out, playing games, and enjoying their Christmas Eve all together. James and Alicia Ortega were the couple that owned the home, and the Ortegas had their own painting business. James had passed it on to his son once he got too old. So he took over and the company continued to thrive, and the family did well for themselves. The Ortegas were kind and generous and known for being that way with all of their neighbors. Every year, the whole family would come to the James and Alicia's house to celebrate the holidays, and Christmas was the main event. At around 11:30 at night, a man dressed in a big red Santa suit knocked on the door. Every year, they had a neighbor dress up as Santa and come to the house to entertain the kids. But this year was different. With him were 4 semi-automatic weapons, and in the wrapped gift was an air compressor filled with homemade accelerant. Well, 8-year-old Katrina was in the house that night, and she recognized the man knocking on the door, so she ran up and answered it. But after the door opened, the man fired at Katrina, badly injuring her face. Afterwards, he turned and began firing everywhere into the house. The way this was done shows that he had intended to hit everyone he came into contact with, regardless of age, clearly. But the man dressed up as Santa Claus was not finished. He proceeded to unwrap the present he brought along with him, which revealed the rolling air compressor. As people did their best to escape, he used it to spray the home with the homemade accelerant, which immediately set the entire house ablaze. Family members were horrified, trying to take cover or escape. One girl jumped out of a second-story window as she tried to flee, breaking her ankle in the process. One neighbor said that they witnessed a teenage boy screaming and running away from his house, saying that they're shooting my family. At some point, the Santa managed to escape, and if anybody inside of the house was alive somehow, the intensity of the flames blocked them entirely. At around 1:50 in the morning, firefighters were somehow able to get control of the flames, but at that point, there was not much left for them to salvage. The house had essentially burned to the ground, and sadly, there were still multiple bodies found left inside. 9 members of the family passed away in the home that night. The bodies were just in devastating condition. They were charred to the point that no one could be recognized. In order to identify each person, they had to go searching through medical and dental records. There were some survivors, but their injuries were incredibly intense. Thankfully, the 8-year-old girl who greeted Bruce at the door survived her injuries, but she was in tough shape, and it took a long time for her to heal. A 16-year-old girl and a 20-year-old woman also survived the attack, but the damage was just horrific. 3 of the victims passed away from the gunshot wounds alone, while the others passed away from their injuries in the fire afterwards. 13 children became orphans after this event and needed to be placed up for care. This clearly is a very personal and emotional attack. Well, that person was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo. Bruce Pardo lived in the San Fernando Valley and was a California State University Northridge graduate. In 2004, he met a woman named Sylvia, and in 2006, the two got married. But the marriage was short-lived. A couple of relationships from Bruce's past were brought to light. Bruce had been engaged once before. He had convinced this fiancée to put a bunch of money away for their honeymoon, but once she was at the altar, he left her and stole the joint funds that they were going to use together. On top of that, Bruce had been in a relationship with a woman and had a child with her. However, he had abandoned that life and started a new one, concealing his entire situation all from Sylvia. Bruce had also been in a relationship with a woman named Elena Lucano, and the two ended up having a child together also. In January of 2001, the child fell into a pool and had been under for quite some time, causing significant brain damage due to the lack of oxygen. Bruce had been alone at the home with the child when this accident had occurred. Elena came home to Bruce screaming, holding their unresponsive child in his arms. Bruce was also committing tax fraud. He continued to claim his son, the one that he abandoned and then dropped all contact with, as one of his dependents. And of course, Bruce didn't contribute 1 cent to that child or to Elena. The medical bills were through the roof because that child required constant care because of the incident. They started racking up and eventually reached the $350,000 mark, and Elena had no other choice, so she sued him. Once a settlement was reached, he completely cut contact with Elena and didn't pay anything in child support. Yet, he still claimed this kid on his taxes. When this information was discovered, Sylvia lost her mind. Sylvia had 3 children from a previous relationship that she brought into her marriage with Bruce. He was close to her 5-year-old daughter, but a switch flipped once his secret life was revealed. While Sylvia and her daughter were away on vacation, Bruce packed up all their belongings and threw them out onto the street. But once she found out who he really was, she filed for a divorce. The process of getting divorced lasted for almost an entire year. Bruce was making around $122,000 at his job while they were together, while Sylvia barely made half of that. But in mere months, he whittled down the family's finances from almost $90K to about $17,000. Apparently, he had been shoveling cash into a private account on the lowdown. During the court proceedings, Bruce's own mother showed up, wanting to show her support for his ex-wife Sylvia. When the divorce was eventually finalized, Bruce was really embarrassed and ashamed of how all these proceedings went down. He was ordered by the judge to pay $1,700 a month in spousal support and over $10,000 in the settlement just in general. This was the last straw for Bruce, and that same month, he purchased a 9mm. In July, Bruce lost his job at ITT Electronic Radar Systems. After this, he had a challenging time looking for work and was not receiving benefits from unemployment because of the whole, tax fraud thing. He had bills piling up and could no longer afford to pay his alimony, yet somehow this guy had enough money to purchase a firearm every single month until December when he committed the massacre. So how does Bruce fit into the Ortegas? Well, Sylvia's parents were James and Alicia Ortega. Sylvia was one of the victims, along with her mother and her father. They were singled out specifically and executed with a 9mm. A few hours after the attack, police got a call that a suspicious item was in someone's vehicle over in Selmar, California, about 30 miles away from Covina. The item happened to be a pipe bomb placed inside of a rental car. So the police immediately rushed over and sent a bomb squad out to check out the whole situation. Well, they started doing their thing and ended up finding something that was, in fact, very suspicious. But as the bomb squad removed it from the car, it detonated. Thankfully, no one was injured, but this thing set off about 500 pounds of ammunition. The police then evacuated all the people in their homes nearby because they weren't entirely sure what could happen next. Here's a question you might have. Why is Selmar, California involved? Well, Bruce's brother had a house out there, and he figured that he'd be safe and this would be a nice place to hide out while everything lasted. Inside the home of Bruce's brother, police officers found Bruce Pardo unresponsive. He had taken his own life with a firearm aimed directly at his head. This was just a few hours after the massacre he committed in Covina. Everyone was horrified and shocked that something like this could happen in their town. One neighbor said Bruce was acting totally fine and normal just a few hours before the massacre. They'd bumped into each other in the yard when Bruce wished the neighbor a Merry Christmas. But what makes the story just that much more interesting is Bruce did not originally intend to stop off at his brother's home. Oh no, Bruce had actually purchased a cute little plane ticket to Canada. On top of that, he strapped $17,000 in cash to his body. The man was trying to make a run for it. Bruce Pardo had the full intention of fleeing the country after all this, but never made it on the plane. Was it the guilt? Was it the horror for the crimes that he had just committed? Nope. It was because Bruce had some injuries. He didn't get out of the house unscathed. In the process of lighting the Ortega's home on fire, this guy received third-degree burns on his body. He quickly tried to change his Santa costume for regular clothes. He hid the remains of the costume in his 2008 Dodge Caliber, booby-trapping it and leaving it parked on the street. If anyone tried to open up the vehicle and remove the evidence, an explosion would go off. When Bruce's home was searched, it was described as a bomb factory. Inside were tons of firearms of all sizes and caliber, ammo, and a high-octane fuel tank. People that knew Bruce personally were shocked beyond belief after everything was revealed. An old girlfriend of Bruce said she could have never imagined that he could have been capable of something like this. But as we all know, people can change. They can also be fake. Evidence was also discovered that showed Bruce had a plan to kill his own mother. He genuinely thought going through with all of this was the only way, and now there's an entire family who's gone all because of him. This is one of the heaviest cases I've yet to cover, and I'm sure you can see why. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, and until next time, I'm Danny. Thanks for watching Killer Bites.